Salmon oil is great for nutrition, but not oils are created alike. Stick around to find out what's good, what to look for, and what differentiates the different products on the market. Omega-6 and omega-3 are fatty acids, which are great for a huge range of health benefits. However, omega-6 is inflammatory in nature and omega-3 is anti-inflammatory in nature. So it's necessary for there to be a balance in the intake in omega-6 and 3 to avoid any health complications. These days, the majority of meat farmed commercially is raised on a natural diet mainly based on grain. These diets result in a meat which is high in omega-6 fats but low in omega-3, so an unbalanced and high omega-6 to 3 ratio. We can see in this table that grain-fed lamb or beef has double the omega-6 to 3 ratio of grass-fed equivalents. But the worst of the lot are pork and chicken. Some pet food sold as complete diets may have included a omega-3 supplementation to restore the balance, but this is not necessarily the case. Even whole prey items bought commercially will have been raised on an omega-6 high diet, leading to an unbalanced high omega-6 to 3 ratio. Any ferret being fed a wild prey diet, at least partially, will benefit from the natural balance in omega fats that animal will have acquired in the wild. So thumbs up there. For everyone else, we will look at how we can boost the omega-3 intake and restore the omega-6 to 3 balance. So this is where salmon oil comes in. Fish is the greatest meat-based source of omega-3 fats. But it's not just salmon. It could be herring, mackerel, cod liver oil, or even caviar. So as to why we feed salmon oil, the answer is not simply to provide omega-3 fats, it is to provide omega-3 fats at levels significantly in excess of the omega-6 levels in order to restore the balance. Ferrets will usually eat to meet their caloric requirements. This means that once they have eaten a certain number of calories, they will stop eating regardless if there is free food available. This makes a ferret a very easy animal to maintain, but it does make it important as to how much oil you feed them. As you'd expect, salmon oil is high in fat and low in protein. This fat has a high calorie content, and therefore a ferret will reduce the amount of food it consumes elsewhere, and therefore a lower protein intake in total. For example, salmon oil is around 40 calories per teaspoon, and an average gill's daily caloric requirement is around 200 calories. So feeding 1 teaspoon of salmon oil could reduce the gill's intake of food by around 20%. Clearly, 1 teaspoon or 5 milliliters is too much to feed daily, so recommendations are more in line with around 1 milliliter daily or around 1/4 of a teaspoon, although this is not a strict daily limit and could be averaged over a week or so. Okay, so by way of reference, we've got a 1/4 teaspoon here. They'll add up. If we place that on our plate, it's going to spread around about 4 centimeter circle, which is around about 1.5 inches. And give you an idea of appropriate daily amounts. So we've discussed why we need salmon oil, or more importantly, why we need omega-3 fats. So let's now have a look at some of the differences between oil products on the market and whether those are features to be valued or not. Whilst all salmon will tend to have high levels of omega-3 fats, farmed salmon will also tend to have high levels of omega-6 as a result of the diet which they are fed at the farm. Now remember, the aim of feeding salmon oil is twofold. 1, to give the benefits that omega-3 fats provide, and 2, to restore the omega-6 to 3 balance. Now, most salmon oils will meet point 1, but to meet point 2, we need a salmon oil which has a much higher omega-3 content than omega-6 in order to restore that balance. Those farmed salmon oils with the high omega-6 content are not likely to provide much use in terms of restoring the omega-6 to 3 balance. So you might say, I should only buy wild-caught salmon oil. And there is some rationale to this, but it's not necessarily the be-all and end-all. As we are interested in high omega-3 content and low omega-6 content, rather than worrying about whether it's wild or not, we can simply look on the label and get the exact answer. Most products will list the percentage content of omega-6 and 3 fats, and to that extent, it's somewhat of an irrelevance as to whether it's wild or not. Unfortunately, some products simply do not provide this information on the label, and you may wish to contact the manufacturer to obtain this information. There's simply no point feeding a product which you do not know the content for. In terms of ingredients, when purchasing a salmon oil, there should be no other ingredients other than salmon oil. Or more accurately, there should be no other ingredients other than fish oil. As with the wild versus farm debate, it's only an indicator, and we make our decision based on the exact omega-3 and 6 content that we can find on the label. What we don't want to see on the label are any colours, flavours, or artificial anythings, especially preservatives. The exception being the inclusion of a natural antioxidant or preservative such as mixed tocopherols or rosemary extract. Salmon oil must be extracted from the fish, and the ways of doing so simplify to two ways. Either 1, heat treatment, i.e. boiling the fish and skimming the oil, or 2, cold treatment, i.e. compressing the fish and extracting the oil. A cold press extraction is often thought superior, as heat breaks down the fatty acids, resulting in a lower omega-3 content. However, as we've mentioned before, what matters is the omega-3 and 6 content in the finished product, and where this is identified on the label, you should choose your product based on the content rather than the manufacture process. Unfortunately, content is not always provided on the label, and where you can't obtain this information directly from the manufacturer, you may wish to make the decision that cold press is a superior product, but you are at risk of this not ending up helping with the omega balance. Ethics is a complicated subject for fisheries. Wild salmon is more ethical as far as the life of the salmon is concerned, as farmed salmon typically live a poor quality of life and is the equivalent of a battery farm chicken. An argument against fishing wild salmon might be its detrimental impact on the natural stocks, as well as the impact on the wider natural environment. However, salmon oil is produced almost exclusively from the waste parts of the fish, primarily the head, and therefore wild salmon oil is unlikely to have a material impact on fishing levels. The term sustainable is ambiguous, as in the fishing context it's often used to refer to farmed fish, as the farming of fish does not impact the wider natural environment or stocks. So in this context, sustainable is not necessarily ethical. But there are many other ways in which the term sustainable is used in fisheries, and therefore it is one to be mindful of. Ferret owners will simply need to make their own judgments on ethics. Ferrets are imprint feeders, which means at a young age they will form neural pathways which tell it which smells represent food and which do not. If a ferret has got to adulthood without coming across salmon oil, then it will not be a simple task to get it to treat it as food. If a ferret refuses neat salmon oil, success can often be had by diluting it with other more palatable oils such as linseed oil or extra virgin olive oil. You can try different dilutions or mixes to see what your ferret will accept at the start, and then over time gradually increase the salmon oil proportion until eventually the ferret is eating salmon oil neat. Other techniques include putting small amounts of salmon oil on their favourite foods or treats in order to get the ferret to begin to start associating the smell with a food smell. There are, of course, many salmon oils on the market, but ultimately you're looking for a product which satisfies 3 factors. 1, it explicitly identifies the omega-3 and omega-6 content, such that you can confirm the omega-3 fats are significantly in excess of the omega-6 fats, in order to provide that beneficial balancing to your ferret's main feed. Although in the absence of exact content, you may take the view that a wild-caught product would deliver a low omega-6 content. 2, it does not contain any ingredients other than fish oils and possibly a natural antioxidant. 3, it meets your personal views on ethics and sustainability. From an initial scan, the US market is slightly better than the UK market in that there are a variety of products offering Alaskan salmon oil with a concentration of omega-3 at around 25% and a very high omega-3 to omega-6 ratio. Examples being the Grizzly Wild Alaskan Salmon Plus, which is actually a combination of salmon, pollock, and other white fish, but it provides a high 24% omega-3 content and a very high omega-3 to 6 ratio of 12:1. Alternatively, there is the Amazon brand Wonderbound's Wild Alaskan Salmon Oil, which is purely salmon oil and provides a omega-3 content of 26%, but an omega-3 to 6 ratio of only 6:1. Still good, but not quite as good as the Grizzly one. In the UK market, the focus is usually more on Scottish or Scandinavian salmon rather than Alaskan, which is fine, but the omega-3 to 6 ratios are usually much worse, and in some cases actually has more omega-6 than 3. To add to the challenge, many products in the UK don't actually provide the exact content on the labels. An example being this Regal Mutt Scottish salmon oil. It has a relatively high omega-3 content of around 26%, but its omega-3 to 6 ratio is only 4:1, so not quite as good as the American version. Although it's much better than one of the main sellers on Amazon UK, which is Brilliant Salmon Oil, which is a Norwegian salmon oil, and it has a relatively low omega-3 content of only around 14%, and a much lower omega-3 to 6 ratio of only 1.3 to 1. I have found, however, that salmon oil is one of those products that has huge numbers of small manufacturers, each with their own unique product content. So for this purchase, definitely do look wider than the large retailers such as Amazon, so that you don't miss a superior product from a small supplier. We hope you found this interesting and, more importantly, useful, so do like and subscribe to support the channel, and why not check out some of our other videos being recommended by YouTube just now.